Okay guys, let's pick up where we left off on the tutorial series here. Last time we had just finished up making our layout for um, our activity. So if we open that up, we'll take a quick look at it. And you see we made the button layout with the info and our sections here where our counter is going to be. So what we need to do now is tie this layout in with the actual game code that we did a few back, and then that should allow us to play our game. So let's go ahead and let's do that. Let's go ahead and open up the TicTacToe tutorial activity, or whatever you named your project. It'll be that activity. Let's go ahead and open that up. Now what we're going to need to do here is a couple things. First off, we'll need to go ahead and declare some variables. So first thing we want to do is go ahead and declare us a game variable, which will be our TicTacToe game. So, and if you named yours something different, it's whatever you named the game file that we made earlier. So I named my TicTacToe game just so we could tell that the game code's in there. But if you named it something different, then whatever you named that is what you'll put here, and we'll just call it mgame. Now, if you've noticed, if you've looked at any like Android development or anything like that, you'll notice that a lot of times when you're declaring a variable, you'll see like a little M here in front of it. What that stands for is it's a standard coding convention. It stands for like member, as in like a member of an object or a class. So that's what that means. So now we got that, we need to go ahead. We need to look, and we need to get an array so we can put our buttons in the array. So let's go ahead and declare that. And some other things that we need to do is we need to access the info from within our code, so we need to go ahead and set up a view of that, and then also the counters we have here that have nothing in them right now, but we're going to reflect whatever the counter is and display it in those text views, so we need to set those up. So let's go ahead and do that. And you'll see the red lines under the button and the text views until we import those statements in. So there's a text view for our info. We need a text view for our human count, which will count the amount of wins that the humans have, or us. And then if we have tie games, we need to go ahead and have a way to access that and increment it. And of course, if the Android wins, we need that. So if you're using Eclipse, you can just put your mouse over here, a little thing will pop up, and you can click import. If you're not using Eclipse, what you'll need to do is go ahead and import the android.widget.button and android.widget.textView. And if I can spell right, that would not be like that. There we go. Now, also, what else are we going to need? We're going to need something that we're not actually going to, a few things that we're not actually going to see on our layout here. First off, these right here are going to be the actual, the text views for, it's going to display the user, how many wins, how many ties, and all that. But we need a way to increment that, so let's go ahead and set that up. So it's going to be an integer, and we'll call it human counter. We'll go ahead and set that equal to 0. And we'll go ahead and do one for the tie counter as well. And a counter for the Android. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to increment these when a game's finished. And then after we increment whichever one it is, we're going to set the actual text in these right here to reflect the new value. So now we're going to need two more things. Since we want to cycle through the human starting and then the computer starting, we need to go ahead and find a way to tell who started last time. And a simple way to do that would just be to put a boolean in there, and like human first. Now another thing we need to do is we need to check, and if the game is over, we don't want the computer or the player to be able to play anymore. So we need to make sure that everything, the buttons, if you click them when the game's over, they won't actually do anything. So an easy way to do that is just to put a boolean in and for game over and set it to false, because we want this game to start, of course, as not being over. So that's basically all we're going to be using, need to declare right now. So let's look and see what's going on here. I'm not going to get into too much of this. I'm just going to go over what we'll actually be using here. So the r.layout.main, you can tell that our layout that we're going to be using is called main.xml. So that's why we're using main here. So if we were using a file and saying something different, we would actually change that. So what do we need to do now? We need to actually go in, initialize our array, and go ahead and populate that. So a new button array. Now if you remember in the game code here, we have something called get board size, and what that's going to do is return our board size, which will be 9. So we need to go ahead and call that. I'll go ahead and get our board size. And you can do it like that. Another way you could do it as well, since we already named it in game up here, is we can actually do it this way as well. So, and that's probably the better way to do it. So let's go ahead and populate our array. Then what we're going to do here is a find by view ID. So find view by ID. And we're going to do r dot ID dot. And now if you remember on our buttons, we named them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all the way through 9, and we spelled it out. So as you can see right there's one's listed, and it turns blue here letting us know that it did find it. If you didn't know what it was, what you could do is go to main XML, click on it, you'll see that the button ID is 1. Click on 2 here, you see the blue square come around it, show you where 2 is. We know where 8 was, and that's one reason that we just put the numbers there, just so that you know, we could tell which one was which and what we named them. So go ahead and do this for the rest of them. I'm not going to type every one of these, so I'm just going to paste this, copy that. Okay. Let's go down here and change these. I need one more. Okay, so now we got all that populated. So now what are we going to do now? We're going to go, and since we have these right here set up, we need to access these as well. So go ahead and do that. And we called that information, I believe. Yep. Next one we need is the human count. And we also had the tie count. And the Android count. So Now that we've got these to where we can set these, let's go ahead and we need to go ahead and set up the counters to where, or sorry, set the text from the counter. So see, we're going to start these at 0. So now that we got a way to access the text view that we need, let's go ahead and set the text to the initial value of 0. And what we'll do with that is human count set text. Now we're going to be getting an integer. I need to put it into a string, so you do integer dot to string. We're going to call the human counter there. And what that's going to do, I'm sorry, the human counter. So what that's going to do is take the integer value that's stored here, put it into a string, and set the text of the count to that. So let's go ahead and do this 2 more times. And this one will be the Thai count. This one will be the Android count. And same thing here. So now that those are set up, everything will start at 0 there. Now what we can do is we need to go ahead and start a new TicTacToe. So we would go mgame. TicTacToe game. So now all that's set up, we got everything that we need. Now what we need to do is actually, we need to start a new game after we have all this set. So we don't have that wrote yet, so what we'll need to do is go ahead and write that. So what do we need to do when we start a new game? First thing we need to do is we need to clear the board, both our layout and the array and the game code as well. So if you look back here, you can see that we actually have something called clear board, so we'll need to call that. And then we'll need to set all the text in the arrays on the buttons. We'll need to set all that text back to being like a null string. So there's nothing on the button, no X or O, since nothing's been played on it. And make sure all the buttons are enabled. And of course we'll have to attach an on-click listener to each button. So let's go ahead and let's set up our start new game. So first thing we need to do is we need to call that the clear board. So mgame dot clear board. Now it's going to clear out everything in the array and the game code, so that way we can have both our layout that we're going to be using on our Android device, and the game code itself will be synchronized and everything will be cleared out. So I'm going to put us a for loop here. Now you could actually call in the get board size here, but I always just go by the length of the array that I'm going to be using. I need to increment I. Now like we said, we're going to have to set the text to like a null string where I have nothing on the button anymore. We'll need to enable our buttons and then set an on-click listener. So let's go ahead and do that, which we can do fairly easily. So set text. Make sure everything's enabled. And as you can see here, set on click listener. Inside here we're going to put an actual button click listener. And we're going to set that on our own. Now, I mean, if you mouse over this and you try to do it, it's going to ask you to make a new class. Now if you click that right there, you'll see this going to pop up and try to actually make a new class in its own, but we're just going to stick the class inside the code here. So we'll do that here shortly. So what else do we need to do when we start a new game? Well, the first thing, or the next thing that we need to do is, if the human's going first, then we need to update the info text here to say, you know, you go first, which we put in our strings. So I'll load this up and I'll show you. You'll see here first human, and it'll say you go first. So if we're going first, we need to put that out. If the computer's going first, then we need to put that like, Android's turn, so that we know that it's the Android's turn. Of course, they're going to move so fast that you're not actually going to be able to see this, so, but we need to put it there anyway. So let's go ahead and set that up. So if the human goes first, we're going to update our text. So now the human's going to be going first. And so now if the human went first this time, we don't want to go first next time. So let's go ahead and set that to false. So now they will not go first. So if the human's not going first, we need to go and tell it what to do. So else, the human's not going first, what are we going to do? We're going to make sure that the info label reflects that, it's the Android's turn. Then we're going to need to go ahead and get the computer move, have it move, and set that the next time the game starts, the human will go first. So we need to go ahead and set all that. What did we put in there for that one? Strings dot computer turn there. So turn underscore computer. And we're going to go ahead and get the next computer move here. So it'll actually be the first move for the computer, right? So need to get an integer value. We'll set it into something called move. That way we can tell what it is. So the integer needs to equal, I'll show you how we're going to get this. So we're going to get this to call it mgame.getComputerMove, which we had wrote over there. Now what we're doing is we're actually declaring a local variable here called move. It's an integer. Now if you look back here at getComputerMove, what's going to happen is there's a local variable here too. But what we're going to do is for I equals just this basic for loop. Now we're going to go in to each of the boards and see if a human player or an Android has played in there. If neither one has played, then it's going to go ahead and do the check like we did before. You can see the earlier tutorial for all that. So the main thing we need to look at here is it's returning I. So it's going to return an integer. Now what we're going to do, when it returns that integer wherever the computer moved, that integer that it returns is going to be returned right here and stored in move. That way we know what to do when we put set move, which we haven't actually done yet, so we haven't made this in this part of the code, but we'll write it next. So what you do set move, it's just going to be the almost the exact same code that we have over in the other. So it'll be set move. What is it? Android player, I think. Yeah, Android player. And move. So if you look over here, you'll see kind of what we're going to model it off of. Let's find set move here. Right here. So what all it is saying who moved. Was it the human player or was it the computer player? And then the location of where they moved. And then we're going to update our array like that. So we're going to do the same thing over here. But before we do that, let's go ahead and make sure that we don't forget to set this to true. And what this means is the next time the game starts a new game, then the human is going to go first, which will be us. So let's go ahead and let's write the set move. So now what we're going to do in this set move here is we're actually going to have to call a set move in the game code because it has to happen here as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Kind of just mirroring what's going on. Okay, so we need to go ahead and do the move in the actual game code. Okay. And now what we're going to do here is we're going to do the same thing. It's a little bit more here because we're using a button. So what we're going to do is whatever location that they're moving to in the array, that button that's at that location, we're going to disable that since the move has been made on that button. We don't want it, the computer or the player, to be able to play there anymore. So we set that to false, which is only actually going to affect like a human player, because the computer player doesn't actually even push the button. So this is so we can't push the button and play there again. And then we want to set the text to an X or an O. So okay. Set animation is not what I was going for there. Supposed to be set text. Okay, so set text value of player. And if you look over here, the value of player is going to be X, or it's going to be O. So now what we're going to do is, we don't want the X and O to be the same color. So let's go ahead and let's give it a little bit of differentiate it between each other. I know an X doesn't look like an O, but we'll do green and red. So if it's a human player, let's just make ours green. And we'll do color dot green. Okay, and now you'll see you'll have a little red underline on this. If you just put your mouse over it, import color. If you're using Eclipse, if you're not using Eclipse, then all you need to do is import android.graphics.color. So now we got the human player set to green. Let's go ahead and if it's the human player, we'll set the text to green. If it's not the human player, then we'll set the text to red. Okay, so that's got our set move. That's got our start game. Now, of course, we need to also remember that when we start the activity, we have to start a new game. So let's go ahead and put that in before I forget here. Okay, so that'll be called whenever we start the activity. Now, one other thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to have to set this right here up, which is going to be a little class, and we're going to put it inside. So let's just drop it right here, it'll be fine. So we'll do a private class. Click listener. And it's going to have to implement view.onClickListener. Okay, so now you're going to notice it's going to say that there's implemented methods here. Now we could add them, or we can make it abstract. Now we're not going to do that because we're going to add it ourselves. So the first thing we need to do is let's go ahead and make a local variable. And what we'll do here is public. Make the constructor int location. That's what we're going to pass into it. And then we're going to set the location equal to the location passed in. Okay, so now what we're going to have to do is we have to put in the on click. It's needed here. So since we're not going to make this abstract, we're actually going to do on click. Alright, so on click view. So what the button that we click on here, as long as the game's not over, we want to be able to take that button click and do something with it. If the game is not over and that button is not disabled, then we want to make sure that we go ahead and follow through, make our play. After we make our play, then we need to go ahead and trigger the computer to make their play, and then we'll check for the winner as all that goes along. So let's go ahead and make sure that the game's not over. So if the game is not over, and we also need to make sure that the button's not disabled. So if it's not disabled, now we need to put in the code that we're going to run. So when we click that button, we need to set the move depending on what button that we clicked, and that button will not be disabled and the game is going to be being able to be played right now. So let's go ahead and set the move. And then player and the location, which will get off the button when we click it. Now after we make our move, what do we need to do? We need to make sure that we check for a winner, and then depending on what's returned from that, we go ahead and have the computer move, or we declare the game being over and set the result. Now if we'll look back here, when we check for the winner of the game, alright, so what it's going to do when you call this is it's going to check your horizontals for a win, your verticals, then check your diagonals for a win, and then it's going to go through the board and it's going to check and see, are there any open spaces left. So if there's open spaces left to where somebody can play, it's going to return a 0 to let us know that the game is still going on. Nobody's won, it's not a tie, there's still open spaces on the board to play. If it goes through all this and it doesn't, none of this returns an integer, then it's going to return a 1, and what this means is the game's a tie. Nobody won, but there's no place else to play, so it's going to be a tie. It's going to return that to us. So we need to base our code here off of what's going to be returned to us. So let's go ahead and check for a winner. Let's set that into an integer. So the winner is going to be equal to whatever is returned from there, what we just saw. So, if there's no winner, so if the winner was returned a 0, then we need to go ahead and we need to set the text of our info box. That needs to be a double equals, or not setting it to 0. So we'll set that text to the string that we had put in there. That is the computer's turn. And then again, this is going to go so fast that you probably won't even see it. So we're going to get the computer move again, which we've already done once, so you know what's going on there. Then we're going to run the set move. Android location and move. So now after this runs, if you look at this, it's going to set this move to whatever's returned. Now we're going to set the move, letting it know that it's the Android that's playing, and then also we're going to pass it whatever the integer is here. Now what we need to do now is check to see if there is a winner again. Okay, so the winner is going to be equal to whatever it returns. Just like we checked for one right here, we're just resetting this variable to whatever it is now to see if there is a winner after the computer moves. So let's go into another if statement here. So after the computer moves, if the game's still going, we need to go ahead and let the player know, hey, the game's still going and it's your turn. So we'll set that string there back to being the human turn, which is going to tell us, hey, it's your turn, go ahead and move. But if it doesn't return a 0, if it returns a 1, 2, or a 3, we need to set that up. So else if the winner is equal to 1, then we know it was a tie. So we need to go ahead and update the text view for the info to reflect that. And we already made a string in here for this, and it was called I think result tie. And then we need to go ahead and increment the tie counter. And now after we increment the tie counter, we need to go ahead and update the text in the tie counter text view down there. So we need to go ahead and do that. So tie count set text. We're going to set that to the integer of the tie counter, just like we did above when it was a 0 when the first game started. So integer.toString tie counter. That's actually tie counter. Okay, and now since the game's over, we don't want any of the buttons to be able to be pressed by the player anymore to initiate the computer trying to move and all that. Since it's over, nobody can move. All the buttons should be disabled and all that. So we'll set the game over to be true. But if it's not a 0 or 1, it can still be a 2 or a 3. So we need to go ahead and set the code up for each of those. So let's go ahead and else if the winner is equal to 2. Now that's going to mean that the human's going to win. So let's go ahead and what was it? Human wins. Yep. Alright, now after we do that, we need the human counter to be incremented. Then we need to set that text. And we need to make sure the game is over again. So that's got 0, 1, and 2. So the only other possibility it could be would be 3. So we don't need an else if here. We just need an else. And basically we're going to put the same thing here. So we can just copy this and paste it so we don't type it all back again. So this is going to be, I think we had Android, right? Yep, Android. And so this is going to be Android. And we can go ahead and just copy Android here. And I'll paste Android over human and paste it here. And of course the game over is going to be true again. So now what this has done is pretty much whenever we press a button, it's going to fire all this off. So we press a button, and then what it does is it checks the button that we pressed. First off, it checks to see if the game's over. Then it checks the button that we pressed, so it goes into the array and makes sure this button is enabled. It's not been played on yet. If that's true, both these things are true, it sets our move. It's going to declare the winner, so we can check for the winner. And if if there's a winner, it'll return an integer, no matter what, 0, 1, 2, or 3, depending on what it is. And after that, it's going to check to see if it's 0. If it is 0, then it needs to go ahead and go through all this right here. And then, of course, if it's not, if it's 1, then this is over, 2, this is over, and 3, this is over. So now if we run this, it should, I believe, work. Let's see. Save our changes. On our emulator here. Installing. Okay, now as you can see, it's got zeros down here. We click a button. We make the move. Peter makes a move. Now it's our turn. Click the button. Says it's our turn again. And this is going to be a tie. It's a tie. Increments it by 1. Now right now we don't have a way to start a new game yet. We haven't put that in. We could have just put a button down here to click, but I wanted to go ahead and show you guys, how you can put a menu in, because that's, it's something that a lot of people want to try. So since we're already over 30 minutes on this video, we're just going to stop this one right here for now, and then the next time we pick up, we'll go ahead and get our menu in, create our other 2 activity files, and then we'll go from there. So I hope you guys like this. We got the game actually working somewhat now, and then we'll get the menu put in so we can make a new game, and we're almost done. So I will see you guys next time.